Today we are going to finish off this equations unit by looking at absolute value equations and how to solve them. So first of all, absolute value. Absolute value is something that you have worked with in previous math classes. What does absolute value mean? What is absolute value? Josh?
How far the number is from zero?
Okay, correct. Okay. Absolute value is the distance a number is away from zero on a number line. Absolute value is the distance a number is away from zero on a number line. So when we see these bars around a number, those are those absolute value bars. So we're looking for the absolute value of 4. The number 4 is 4 places from 0 on the number line. If we're talking about a negative 4, we are 4 places from 0 on the number line. It's just in a different direction. Okay? Distance is always positive. Doesn't matter which direction you go. And when we're talking about distance, distance is always positive. So your absolute value answer is going to be a positive answer. So we're going to be working with absolute value equations. An absolute value equation is an equation that contains absolute value. So they give us an example. The absolute value of x is equal to 9. If I wanted to solve that, what number can I put in place of x to make that a true statement? 9. Okay. So x could equal 9.
-9.
Okay. Or x could equal a -9. So when we were solving equations, most of the times we came up with that one value that made the equation true. Once in a while we had a special case. With absolute value equations, most of the time you are going to have those two answers, because we have to consider both that positive and that negative. With this next piece, if you open up on the left-hand side, when you open up, your page is blank on the left side. Okay, I want you to write these steps down. So now that you have those steps written down, we're going to go through those steps each time we solve an absolute value problem. So the first example that we have says that the absolute value of x plus 4 is equal to 3. Step 1 says to get the absolute value on a side by itself. In this particular problem, that first step has already been done. The absolute value is all by itself. Step 2 says to check to see if there is a solution. If the absolute value is equal to a negative number, there is no solution, because we said absolute value is always positive. It's equal to a positive 3, so there will be a solution. Step 3 says to drop the absolute value and rewrite the equation. So when we do that, we write two equations, one of them set equal to a positive number and one of them set to a negative answer. So I'm going to write x plus 4 equals 3. I'm going to write x plus 4 equals negative 3. Step 4 says to solve both equations. So on the equation on the left, what am I going to do to solve for x? Ashton? I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So x equals negative 1. On the second equation, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And I get x equals negative 7. So there should be an or between those. Okay. So the answer can be negative 1 or 7. And then again, it tells you to check your answer to make a true statement. If I put negative 1 in here, negative 1 plus 4 is negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is a positive 3. If I put 7 in, negative 7. Okay. So there I caught my mistake, because when I wanted to put a positive 7 in, 7 plus 4 would give me 11. So I looked because I knew I made a mistake. Negative 7 plus 4 is negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is a positive 3. So again, by checking your work, you can catch those little mistakes, like a negative sign that I made. Example 2. Again, first step, we have to have the absolute value all by itself. This time that's not done for us. I have this 3 that I need to get rid of. How am I going to get rid of that 3? Kasha? I'm going to divide, because that's being multiplied. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So the absolute value of 13 minus 2x equals 5. So I got the absolute value by itself. I checked to see if there's a solution. It's equal to a positive, so there is a solution. So now I write my two equations. So I drop the absolute value. I don't write those bars anymore. I have 13 minus 2x equals a positive 5. I have 13 minus 2x equals a negative 5. And then I need to solve. So what's the first thing I'm going to do to solve this equation? Jonathan? Very good. I'm going to subtract 13. Okay, 13 is positive. So to make it go away, I subtract 13. Make sure you drop down your negative with the 2x. 5 minus 13 is negative 8. Then I divide both sides by negative 2 to get a positive 4. The steps that I do on the other side are exactly the same. I'm still going to subtract 13. I just get different answers. So I drop down my negative 2x. Negative 5 minus 13 is negative 18. I'm going to divide both sides by 2. X equals a positive 9. So my answer could be 4 or 9. And then we're going to do our check. If I put 4 in place of x, 2 times 4 is 8. 13 minus 8 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. If I put 9 in place of x, 2 times 9 is 18. 13 minus 18 is a negative 5, but I'm using absolute value. So the absolute value of negative 5 makes it positive 5 times 3 equals 15. So again, I can check my work. I know my solutions are correct. Example 3. Again, I need to start out by getting the absolute value all by itself. So this time I have 2 numbers to get rid of. Which one do I get rid of first? The 3 or the 7? Josh? I'm going to get rid of that minus 7, so I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So 3 times the absolute value of 4x plus 2 equals 18. Then I can get rid of the 3 by dividing. Absolute value of 4x plus 2 equals 6. So I got the absolute value all by itself. Got it. You need to sit up and pay attention, please. Now I can write my 2 equations. 4x plus 2 equals positive 6. 4x plus 2 equals negative 6. Then I'm going to solve each one. So I'm going to start out by subtracting 2. 4x equals 4. Divide by 4. X equals 1. I'm going to do those same 2 steps on the other equation. I'm going to subtract 2. 4x equals negative 8. Divide by 4. X equals a positive 2. Negative 2, thank you. So I have a positive 1 and I have a negative 2. So again, I'm going to check. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. Minus 7 is 11. If I use the negative 2, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Plus 2 is negative 6. Absolute value makes it a positive 6. times 3 is 18, minus 7 gives me 11. Last example, they tell us is a special case, so we're going to start working it and see what makes it a special case. So again, first thing we have to do, okay, we can't make any determination right now, okay, because you have to have the absolute value all by itself. Okay? So you have to do that first step. You can't make the determination now seeing a negative. Okay? So here we need to get the absolute value by itself. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. Absolute value of 3x plus 5 equals negative 8. Once the absolute value is by itself, then step 2 says we can see whether there's a solution or not. And because it's equal to a negative, there is no solution. Okay. But again, we cannot look at the original problem because in our equation, if this would have been a negative 6 instead of a positive 6, then I would have added on both sides, and my negative would have changed to a positive, and then I would have solutions. Okay? So we cannot make that determination of no solution until we have that absolute value all by itself.